We're recording this webinar, so if anyone doesn't feel comfortable having their video, you can leave your video off. We're just going to use it for future educational purposes to let other people craft with us. All right, I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the Zoom controls. I'm sure everybody's pretty familiar with it by now, but just a little shakedown as well. So happy World Water Day, first of all. Water is life. We're really excited about it. Hi. And thanks to our grantors and collaborators, our grantors from the YCF, Arts Council, City of Morgantown, and we have some really awesome collaborators today with the Department of Environmental Protection, which is our West Virginia Environmental Protection Group run by the state. We also have Project Learning Tree, which does really fun crafts and learns about the environment. And we have the YEP, which is the Youth Environmental Program, and Project WET, which is another program we do all these fun activities with. So my name is Maya. I am the AmeriCorps Vista at Friends of Deckers Creek. I have some other people on the line here. Brian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. I am Brian. I'm the Executive Director at Friends of Deckers Creek, and really looking forward to diving into this. We've got a fun little craft that we can put together, and we're going to go over, learn some, and we're also going to create some. And we'll have fun at it too.
Yeah. And Jonathan's here. He's also with Friends of Deckers Creek.
Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan. I'm the operations manager at Friends of Deckers Creek. We all work pretty hard. We got a really great group of people together to do these activities, and I think you guys are going to have fun and learn a little bit too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll introduce our presenters here in one moment. But first, I want to talk about some Zoom housekeeping. So we just want to remember to have our mute ourselves sometimes if we want to be loud, and so then it won't interrupt the presenters. But if you have a question, you can raise your hand at the little at the bottom corner, or you can put some questions in the chat box, and you can ask to be unmuted. So then we can let you talk to us and ask some questions, okay? And then we also have, and that will be at the bottom, it should have a little section down here that says that you can annotate, and you can draw, or you can also do a question, raise your hand, or like kind of do a hand clap, or ask to go faster or slower, okay? And then, oops, sorry. Our presenters, we have Linda Carnell from Project Learning Tree. Linda, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, thank you, Maya. I'm Linda Carnell. I'm a forester with the West Virginia Division of Forestry out of Romney, West Virginia, and I'm also the statewide coordinator for Project Learning Tree. So can't wait to make a watershed with you.
Yeah, that's so neat. I wonder if any of you guys want to work in the forestry department when you get older. I love trees. I love going on hikes and looking at them. And it's we live in such a beautiful state to watch the fall colors as well. And then we also have Martin Christ, who is a DP basin coordinator. And he also, he's going to teach you a little bit about geography of watersheds today. And he also has been a big help to Friends of Deckers Creek in helping us make us what we are today. Martin, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, I'm Martin. And just what Maya said.
Sorry, Martin, we can't hear you very well. Maybe put your mic down.
I backed off of the computer. Sorry about that.
No
I'm
worries.
Martin. I work for the DEP. I live in Preston County, and I've picked up a bit of trash along the gorge in Deckers Creek, and I'll be talking about that gorge.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Martin. Okay, so Linda is going to be our first presenter today. Are you guys ready to build a watershed? I'm really excited. I think it'll be really fun. So I have some of my crafts here, and I'll go ahead and stop presenting so Linda can share, okay?
Sounds good. Good afternoon. Like I said, my name is Linda Carnell and I'm a forester. And like Maya said, you know, I deal with trees, and when people call, sometimes they're looking to call and talk to us about questions about animals and soils and waters. And sometimes we forget that the watershed that we live in, oh, did I say watershed? Do you know what a watershed is? I think we need to find out. If you do know what a watershed is, put it in the chat room. Put it in the chat and tell me what you think a watershed is. I can give you a brief definition, but I want to hear what you think. And while those things are coming in, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're going to do here in the next few minutes. So basically, a watershed is just a place, if you can imagine, where water sheds, okay? Everyone look, if you've got a window close by, look outside. When it rains, have you ever seen water collect in certain places? And, oh, I see a good one. So from Alexander, he said, they're saying this is a place where water is stored. Absolutely, absolutely. So think about it if you're a cloud. There you are floating around in the sky and everything, and all of a sudden it comes time, you're just too heavy and it's time for you to rain. And as the rain comes down, it hits all different kinds of topography, which is terrain or land, the way land is formed. So you may land on a mountain, you may land in a stream, you may land on a sidewalk. It's hard to tell where you will fall as a raindrop, but every raindrop that falls goes somewhere. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a little video about what a watershed is. And then we're going to do a craft and we're going to build our own watershed. And what I show you is going to be totally different from what you have. So everyone that's on this webinar today, you are going to have a unique experience. So I'm hoping I do this right. We're going to share a little video and follow along. It's about 5 minutes.
Yay.
The Kokoraz Educational Series is proud to present Watersheds. Do you live on land? No. No. Well, if you're not like these guys and you live on land, guess what? You are living in a watershed. Now, a watershed isn't this, or this, or this. And it's definitely not to be confused with a water closet, which is an old-timey term for a bathroom. No. A watershed is an area of land where surface water drains down to a single point, be it a stream, lake, or ocean. A watershed, also called a drainage basin, collects all of the water that doesn't first get evaporated or transpired, whether it's from rain, snow and ice melt, sprinklers, spilt slushies, or even... Oh, yes, my old nemesis, water balloons. It's like a big funnel that drains down to one spot. The area of a watershed is defined by topography, the shape of the land. Its borders are marked by the drainage divide, the highest ridge that divides the water from falling into its own basin rather than that of another. To visualize it better, let's take a look at this roof and its gutters. The rain that falls on each side ends up draining into its own gutter. The drainage divide is marked by the peaks of the roof, and each section could be considered a watershed. The area of a watershed is also defined by what common source of water it flows into. Jennifer lives in a watershed that flows into a nearby stream. That watershed, along with neighboring watersheds, make up an even bigger watershed, made up of other neighboring watersheds that make up an even bigger watershed. You see how this could be pretty confusing, but luckily we have an easy way to classify watersheds. We use HUCs, or Hydrological Unit Codes, which is just the fancy name we use for a watershed address. Think of it like a jigsaw puzzle. The first number represents one piece of a puzzle made up with relatively few pieces. The second number represents a more complex puzzle with even more pieces. You can keep breaking up the puzzle into more and more pieces until you get your full address. This is Jennifer's address. But no matter where you live, it's in a watershed. Arr! Arr! Right. I'm not talking about you guys. Looking at these maps, you can really start to understand why it is so important to know exactly how much precipitation falls in what specific areas. Take McNamee Peak in Colorado, for example. You could have 3 raindrops fall within just a few feet of each other, but end up in completely separate watersheds. Those few feet could end up in differences of hundreds and hundreds of miles. This is why having lots of precipitation measurements over a wide area is so important. At Kokoraz, volunteers just like you contribute precipitation data that allows water managers to better calculate how much water they can expect in their basin. While a single measurement of 0.3 inches doesn't seem like much, when it's averaged and multiplied over a large area with all the other data, it can start to add up quickly. Let's go back to our roof example to see how much water could be collected from a small rain shower. As explained earlier, there are 3 different watersheds, meaning 3 different places where the water runs off the roof. Let's look at the front watershed. 30 feet by 10 feet equals 300 square feet of roof. Let's say that it rains a half an inch over this house. On this watershed, that ends up being over 93 gallons of water. Now think about the same thing on a larger scale. Even over a small watershed, if the entire amount of rainfall washed downstream, it might be enough water to fill up a stadium. There are a lot of other factors that go into estimating how much water fell within a watershed, and how much is going to be running off and moving downstream. Scientists use many sources of data to predict runoff. How much water seeps into the ground depends on the type of soil, how absorbent it is, and how much water is already in the soil. It depends on how much plant life is around and the rate at which the plants use water. It depends on how warm or dry the atmosphere is, which determines the rate of evaporation. It depends on how much water is stored or used by people for cities and agriculture. Knowing these factors, scientists, specifically hydrologists at the National Weather Service, produce what are called hydrographs, which are basically graphs showing the past, current, and predicted levels of streams and rivers across the United States. Thinking about all of the factors that go into a hydrograph, you can see how complex it is to determine the amount of water that will flow downstream after a rainstorm. But it all starts with one crucial measurement, precipitation, and that's the one you take and report with your gauge. So get out there, grab a friend even, and make a difference in determining the health of your watershed.
Thanks, Linda. That was such a cool video.
Well, I know it's talking about places in Colorado, but a watershed is a watershed. So even in West Virginia, we have tons of different watersheds, and I think Martin's going to talk about that here in a bit. But before we go to Martin, let's go ahead and build a watershed and see what you picked up from the video. Okay, so I'm going to switch to another camera. And let's take a look at how to build a watershed. And if everybody can hear me, Maya, you can probably just give me a thumbs up.
Yeah,
So.
I can hear you.
Okay, good. All right. So what I asked everybody to get was either some kind of pan. This is an aluminum pan, or you could use a cake pan. If you don't have a cake pan or anything like that, you can use towels or old newspapers. But this is just something that can hold our watershed, and we don't want to make a big mess. Then we needed some just regular paper. Okay, we want a water bottle. And with this, I put a couple drops of blue food coloring in it just so that we can see where the precipitation is going. You could use just regular water. And I have 4 markers here. I have a green, blue, brown, and red. So we're going to do a couple different things. The first one, and this may sound really dumb, the first thing I want you to do is take a piece of paper, nothing on the front or back, and just crush it. Okay? Crush it and then open it back up gently. Don't smooth it out, gently. Now, if you see the paper that I have here, you notice there's some peaks and valleys. So imagine if this is our topography. This is our actual land area. So you can see some ridges, maybe some mountain ridges or hill ridges. You can see some valleys down here. Okay, what I want you to do is put this piece of paper in your tin pan or whatever pan you have. Okay, and so now, again, you see it's kind of like your topography. So what I want you to do, and I've got one here that I'm going to use because I like this topography too. If you can see this, where I live is the Eastern Panhandle. And sometimes when the weather comes this way, it hits the place we call the Allegheny Front. The Allegheny Front is a mountainous area. It is basically the Eastern Continental Divide. And when weather comes this way, it hits the Allegheny Front and it breaks up. So this area on this side is something we would call a rain shadow. So rain is coming this way, but it breaks up. So you get most of your rain on this side, and on the other side, you'll have not as much rain. So here's what we're going to do. With your brown marker or whatever color you want to do, these are just what I'm using. I want you to outline where you think your ridge tops are. So I know I've got a ridge top here, and I'm just going to mark it real easy, just so I can see it. And so if you think about it, this ridge top is actually determining where our watershed is. Okay, so you can see this ridge up here, the water is going to flow down here someplace, but it's also going to flow down on this side. So do your ridges, and it's best if you use water-soluble markers or washable markers, because then you'll see something pretty neat here soon. There's also a couple ridge tops over here. So this is also going to determine the water. So you can even see some little micro watersheds, places where the water is going to go in different areas. And then even on the back side, we've got another ridge area, actually a couple of them. So if I was a crow flying over, taking a look down, or a satellite looking down on the Earth, this is how I would see Earth's topography. So it's just like a 2D, two-dimensional look. But then when we're here on Earth, we can see this as a 3D model. We can see all the shapes and the terrain and everything. So now, once you've done your ridges, what I want you to do is take a blue marker, if you have one, and I want you to kind of hypothesize or decide where do you think you were a raindrop, if you were a storm coming over this topography, where would your water flow? So I'm sure there's going to be some water coming down here. I mean, this is really steep, and it's probably going to go down into this area and lay. So that may even be a lake for all I know, but I'm going to have to wait and see. I see another place where there's going to be some water come down here. And then some water may actually go in here and collect. There's water that'll probably come down all these flat places. So any of these valleys, I'm thinking, this may be kind of tough. Now let's turn around the backside here. I know there's probably going to be some water coming down here and yet another watershed. And probably up in here too. Now, the thing we are doing when we determine where watersheds are, people like city planners, all kind of people use topographic maps, and they need to figure out where the water is going to go. Because let's take, for example, with my red pen, I'm going to put a town, whoops, right down here at the bottom of the hill. Won't it be nice? And I'm going to put a town, maybe this is a ski area. So I'm going to put some little houses right up here. You know, I'm going to be right at the top of the hill. And in the Eastern Panhandle, a lot of people like to build up on the top of the mountain. They just really think that's neat until the snow comes in. I'm also going to put a town right down here around this lake. Just going to put a few houses here. And you could really make this as big or as small as you want. And watersheds can be as big or as small as you want. One watershed may be an ocean. And then another one, a watershed may be the size of your yard. So here's what we're going to do. Now that we've kind of decided where we think the water's going to go, we've put some houses, we think there might be a lake right here. Now it's time to make a storm. So with your water bottle, I don't want you to spray really hard and close because usually the sky is really big and it covers a large area. So what I want you to do is to spray very lightly. I closed this up. Just very lightly around your watershed. And I want you to start noticing if you see where the water is actually going.
Linda, did you freeze up on us? She's back.
Oh, we're back. All right, so now that I've sprayed this, I'm looking to see where the water has collected. And if you notice, the water has collected down here where I thought there might be a lake because it's coming off of this area, and you can see wherever you marked, it's kind of bleeding down. That's no problem. And I even did some up here, and everything is going down here, and there's a lake forming that I didn't even recognize. But there's definitely a lake happening right down here where this little town is. So what kind of problems do you think could be caused by that? If I build my houses right next to a place where there's going to be a lot of flooding, do you think that's a good idea? Probably not. The other thing too, let's take a look at these mountainside residents. Yeah, Tommy had a really good suggestion, and I see some people up there in the videos. If you have made one, I'd love to see what yours looks like because everybody's is different. Okay, now.
Great job, Wade and Reed.
If you look pretty close, you see where I put some towns, maybe my ski resort right up here. Now let's think about this in another way. I had a bunch of rain up here. Now let's think where maybe we have somebody that's put some trash out or some fertilizer on their ground or things outside their house, and then the water came and moved it. Do you see how the red is running down the hill? Most people know that red and blue make purple, right? Look here. I've got a purplish lake down on my beautiful red town. So that means some of my stuff from the top has also moved down in my watershed and is polluting some of the water areas down below. So the thing is, anything that's upstream, let's say like Deckers Creek, if you pollute something at the headwaters of Deckers Creek, it could come down to places like Morgantown and some of the other areas and cause some pollution. So that's the reason it's very important to take care of your pollution in your area. Okay, so what I'd like to do is everybody who did one, hold yours up to the screen so I can see it.
We had quite a few from Alexander Patisse's class. We have first graders, kindergartners, and fourth graders, and they made some great watersheds. Great job, Lily.
Yes.
Good job, Jude.
Very nice.
Great job, Wade and Reed.
So that's one thing. That's one way to build a watershed, and it's really kind of neat to see how you can do this. You can also go and do this again, because every time you crush a piece of paper, it's going to look different each time. So I had one already kind of prepared, and this time this is more of a valley. So this time I kind of crinkled it, but I made it a little softer. And when I opened it up, mine had a great big valley in the bottom. And you could mark this as green all around here, maybe saying that this is all forested and everything. And then to do the same thing, delineate or mark the boundaries of your watershed. Okay, so you got some high ridges here. I mean, you can do this and for all the ones you do, none of them are going to be identical. So it's kind of neat to see. And you can even manipulate this a little bit to kind of make some things happen that you want. Okay, and let's just say this is a great big lake down here. And again, if you're around Morgantown or you've been around Morgantown, you know there's a lot of big lakes up there. So let's say this is Cheat Lake for a demonstration. And again, there's forest all around here. Forest, forest, forest. Maybe we'll even say I-68 comes right here and pretend like that's a bridge that went across the lake. So you don't think too much of it, but even all those highways have places where water has to shed and get off so that so you're not driving through water. And again, here comes a rainstorm. So what happens, you know, we could draw different houses in there. We could see what's going on. And if you watch it long enough, pretty soon you start seeing different things going into our lake. So this is very important that we take care of our watersheds and try to keep pollutants out of it, because it doesn't just affect you, it affects all of us. Okay? So I hope you had fun with that. It's really kind of neat, and you can still play with this even afterwards. I always like this activity, and a lot of the people I work with, adults, they like to do it too, because they've never thought about creating a rainstorm and seeing where their water goes. I even have a great big pan, like something you would put a turkey in, and do it with bigger paper, and it is really neat to see. So this is going to finish my presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me, and I'll get ready to turn this over to Martin.
Thanks, Linda. How's everyone doing? So can we think about maybe where the water and the pollution, so if we pollute on a mountaintop at the top of the ridge, we know now that that pollution up at the top might still, after rain, get into our watersheds, and that's not good, right? So can you think of where our watershed goes to? Maybe to a nearby state or a nearby city like Pittsburgh? And then, so our watershed, Friends of Deckers Creek, hits the Mon. Probably most of you heard the Monongahela, and that goes to Pittsburgh. And then from there, can you think about where it might go? It goes all the way to the Mississippi. And then after that, it can make its way to the ocean. So the way we treat our water here affects our local community, and it also affects other people way downstream and all over the world. So it's really important to take care of our water. And just to
give you an idea, I know Deckers Creek is a small watershed for the most part. Where I live over in the Eastern Panhandle. So I live over around Cumberland, Maryland, or Kaiser, West Virginia. And all of our water goes to the Chesapeake Bay. So everything that happens up at Spruce Knob, it's really kind of neat. Has anybody ever been to Spruce Knob, the highest point in West Virginia? If you've been to Spruce Knob, it depends on where you are. If it rains, part of the rainstorm can go clear down to the Gulf of I can't think. The Gulf of Mississippi.
Gulf of Mexico.
Mexico.
Thank you.
Mexico,
Gulf
right?
of Mexico. Blah.
Yeah.
Or it can go off the other side and end up in the Potomac River, which will take you right into the Chesapeake Bay, which will end up in the Atlantic Ocean sooner or later. So yeah, that one little raindrop can really take a very different tour depending on where you are precipitating.
Absolutely. So yeah. So I wanted to read Alexander Patisse's class comments. We asked what people's favorite things about water is, and they said some of our favorite things about water is that it's tasteless, so we can't not like it. How we can use it for many uses, and how important water is for life. Those are all really good points, and I fully agree. And they also had a question about how the pollution can affect the water cycle when water evaporates. The first grade question. Alexander, if you'd like to be unmuted, I'll click this ask to unmute, but you don't have to unmute if you don't want to, okay? Hi.
Hi.
Oh,
Oh, listen to the video. All right, there we go.
hi, class.
Wow.
Oh, it's so great to see you. So what was your question about water, the water cycle and evaporation? Do you just want to know how it works?
Whenever the water evaporates, where does it go?
Where does the water go when it evaporates? So yeah, so if you think of, have you ever seen your mom or dad boil a pot of water? Like when they're making, yeah, like when they're making macaroni, and you see all of that evaporate, right? And so you're actually, what do you think that steam is?
Steam?
Yeah, it's steam. And that's actually, yeah, does anyone in the back want to talk? Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you for raising your hand.
What is water made of?
So water is made of, it's called H2O. And the 2 means there's 2 hydrogen particles and there's 1 oxygen particle. And oxygen's what we breathe, right? And when they combine together, they make water, which is a really great resource for life. It's what everyone needs to survive. And our bodies are actually made up of more water than anything else. Isn't that amazing? So that's why drinking water is so important, because it helps your body run. Yeah, and so real quick on, you wanted to know where evaporation goes. When the steam from a pot, that's kind of what the environment does. When it gets really hot, the steam goes up into the air, and then the air, all the moisture accumulates, so it all goes together. And what are those white things you see in the sky?
We talked about this yesterday.
Yeah, they're clouds in the sky. And when they start to look kind of dark, and then they rain down, right? And precipitation. Does that make sense?
Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes, it does. Thank you very much for that explanation.
Of course. Thanks, everyone. And I think Reed, Jennifer Little, we will unmute you. Thanks, everyone. Hey, Reed, did you want to show off your model?
Yeah.
outside.
Wow, that's so good. Uh-oh, your internet's a little, you sound like a robot because the internet's breaking up a little bit. But I can see it and it looks really good. There you guys are. Did you want to try to explain it one more time?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
It's supposed to be a pot and there's water falling into it, and this arrow is always supposed to be outside, and rain's falling into a pot outside, and that's how they create a watershed.
Wow, that makes sense. Great job. That's awesome.
Excellent. Excellent.
You guys all did so good. Are you ready for Martin and the next activity where we're going to be talking about geology and watersheds? Do you guys know what geology is? Well, Martin's going to tell us a little bit about it, and we're going to get our Play-Doh out. And if anyone has like a string or a butter knife, and then we're going to play with our Play-Doh, but let's wait until Martin says to get each color out, okay? Because he'll tell you what to do with the Play-Doh in a little bit, all right?
There's a question too. We have a hand raised from Jude.
Yeah.
I thought that we were gonna do one activity a day, so I'm signed up for 3 days.
Yeah. Yep. So we have 2 activities today, and we also have an activity tomorrow and on Wednesday. So if you don't have the Play-Doh right now to do this activity, that's okay. You can still listen, and then you can use whatever you remember, and you can try to make the Play-Doh later. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jude. I'm so glad you signed up for all 3 days too. We can't wait to see you tomorrow as well. All right. Ready, Martin?
Ready as I'll ever be. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about geology. And basically there are 2 reasons I'm talking about geology. One is because it is really, really, really fun. You get to talk about mountains. You get to talk about mountains going up. You get to talk about continents colliding. You get to talk about mountains washing away. And you can talk about lava if you want. What can be more fun than all that? Another reason why I'm talking about geology is because it's very important for watersheds. You can see from this mountain here that the mountains tell where to flow, and also it can tell the water it can control what the water is going to touch. So I'm not talking about geology because I know a lot about it. The chat just said there were parents who are geologists. Maybe they're listening and maybe they can help at the end. Okay, so this is not what we're talking about. This is just a view that I liked. Let's try and find the area I'm going to talk about. Okay, so there's West Virginia. What I'm going to talk about is somewhere in West Virginia. Let's find the counties. Oh, this is Monongalia, Monongalia County, where Morgantown is. It's this big sort of non-green area. This is Preston County. And I'm going to talk about Deckers Creek. And the Deckers Creek watershed is here. You can see, well, the mouth of it is here in Morgantown, about right there. And it covers a lot of this area in between. And, all right, I got to move the the videos out of the way. This here is the Walmart near Kingwood, and the Deckers Creek watershed doesn't go all the way there, but stops about right here. Okay, I'm going to zoom into one area within the Deckers Creek watershed. And so I mentioned that geology tells the water what it's going to touch. And that means talking about what's underground. And that's part of what we're going to do with the geology. But what I want to show you here is in this red area, there's a mine that discharges water into Deckers Creek. And in this area, there's a mine that is basically, well, that also discharges some water into Deckers Creek, and they're completely different. So this is where the Richard mine discharges. You can see right here, there's a channel. And after that channel, this nice dark water, which is clean, go down here. And what's happening is there's a coal mine, and it discharges right out of the side there and goes through this channel into Deckers Creek. Now watch this forested area right here, and I'm going to tilt it so you can see how the water is actually practically coming out of a cliff and getting into the creek. Okay, now let's look at the other mine. So that's a coal mine. Let's look at this other mine.
So does this remind you guys of the activity you just did and looking at the map from the top and seeing all of the ridges, and then when you turn it on the side, it becomes 3D, right? So that's kind of what this looks like, this map. Go ahead, Martin.
Okay, this is a limestone mine, and some of it's underground, some of it's also above the ground, as you can see. But what I want you to really see is that this is down in the middle of a valley. So watch this piece of forest as I tilt it.
We're tilting.
Okay, so you can see that the workings of the limestone mine are in the valley, and there are these ridges up here that are still forested. So if we go back, we see that underground here is the limestone, and this is downstream, but even though it's downstream, underground here is the coal. So we've got two different things underground, and they come out at different levels. So I'm going to work with Play-Doh to see if we can figure out how that's working. Okay, stop share. There I am. All right, so you make me the presenter. That's good. All right, so here's our world. That
So we can get out our
skinny
Play-Doh.
bit is for later. All right, so I want you to imagine that you're in a deep ocean, and there are little tiny creatures in the deep ocean, and they're made of basically they're made of chalk, and they sink over millions and millions and millions of years and make a thick layer. So after the millions of years, that thick layer looks like this. It looks like a thick layer of limestone. And in fact, the geologists call it the Greenbrier limestone. Sorry for the shaking of the camera there. So that's the Greenbrier limestone. And then for some reason, the continent gets higher or the water gets lower, and all these sediments run out into the water, or on the sediments settle. It's a different kind of sediments. They're rich in iron, so it's red. And the next formation falls down right there on top of the Greenbrier limestone. And that one's called the Maw Chunk Formation.
Martin, we have a question. Okay, Maya's
Yeah.
answered it there. If you can just repeat the layers that you have for people that are still
Okay,
catching up real
so
quick.
the bottom is the Greenbrier limestone. That's why it's green. And the second is the Ma Chunk Formation. That's kind of spelled funny, M-A-U-C-H-C-H-U-N-K. You can think of it as everybody have fun tonight, everybody Ma Chunk tonight. All right, so then the water comes up again and it's a near shore environment. And that means that the water is moving as it drops stuff out, and it just drops out. It doesn't drop out every particle, it just drops out the sand particles. So the next layer is kind of sandy colored. And it's made of sandstone. And in fact, it's really hard rock that forms cliffs. And there are a lot of people who like to climb in the Deckers Creek watershed. And what they're climbing is this sandstone. Well, so I've lost track of what the depositional environment is of the next layer, but it's called the Allegheny Formation, and it has a lot of different things in it. It's got shale, and I think it's got a few limestones, and it's also got some coal, but we're just gonna say it's yellow. So that's the Allegheny Formation. And then there's one layer of coal I'm gonna keep track of. And this is going to be called the Upper Freeport coal. Oh, this is getting thick. I hope it'll still work. And then there's one more formation. And its name, if you want to know, is the Conemaugh Formation. So if you're from Pennsylvania, you may recognize those names. There's a Pottsville in Pennsylvania, and there's a Conemaugh in Pennsylvania. Okay, so now is the fun part. Remember, we talked about continents colliding. Well, that's what happens now. And of course, this is all hundreds of millions of years ago. Guess what? There were no dinosaurs for this. This happened before the dinosaurs even. Okay, so the continents collided, and even though the continents bumped into each other far away, it squeezed it here. So it bent it into a bend like that. Everybody got their watersheds bent or their geology bent? Okay. So now we have to go through hundreds and hundreds of millions of years really fast. And what happens
Think about what the top represents and what maybe these side parts represent, like on Martin's.
So erosion is sort of like a classroom. It hits the ones who are highest first. All right, that wasn't a great thing to say, but we'll just get on with it. So this is my agent of erosion. It's a piece of dental floss, and we'll just erode off the top, just like that. So you can see it cut it off, and now we can see that the geological layers don't all go over the ridge. This coal layer here, this blue layer, it pops out somewhere on the flat part of the ridge. All right, then the other place that erosion is really strong in is wherever a stream forms. So I'm going to say that the stream forms right here. And the stream makes a gorge right through the geology. Okay, so this is what it looks like in mine. And you can see that the green briar, the green clay or Play-Doh, in this case, what I call the green briar limestone, pops out right there in the middle of the valley of the watershed. And that over here, that's where the coal is. And that's why the coal water comes out right down there in the watershed. So you can see how even in a small part, when you start bending the geological layers, water can go through very different stuff. And people who have been around Deckers Creek and heard the Friends of Deckers Creek talk may probably know that the water coming out of the Greenbrier limestone is pretty good, but once you go by the coal mines here, you see, we saw that dirty water in the aerial photos. Okay, so I think.
Have you guys ever seen rocks that are strange colors in any streams? Like maybe an orange kind of rock? That's from the coal mines. It's called acid mine drainage. And all the iron comes out and it attaches to all of the rocks in the limestone. So the limestone actually helps offset it. And that's what gives it that orange color that you might see. And that's what we work to try to clean up so the water is healthier afterwards.
Hey, Martin.
Now, it's not every coal mine, but a lot of coal mines are like that.
Hey, Martin, could you pull up your our little model so we can just look right on the stream? Imagine like we're walking in Deckers Creek. What would it look like if we look at the rocks? To look at the layers. Just pull up your the Play-Doh for a couple angles.
Okay. All right, let me dip it up in the air here. So there's
cool.
There you can see the inside, and it's sloped like this. So this is upstream of that.
Mm-hmm.
And all right, so again, the downstream is towards me now.
Yeah.
And you can see how there's a layer of coal there down below everything, so that if it comes out of the coal, it has to go straight out of the cliff and into the stream.
Cool. Thanks, Martin.
Good job. Thanks. If any of you want to show us your formations, your mountaintops with your geology. Oh, some of them have already been smashed. They still look good. Did you guys have fun? Smash. You are like tectonic plates moving, smashing them together, right? Very neat. Thanks, Alexander. We look forward to it too. Feel free to take photos of your activities and send them to us if you're comfortable with it. We love to share them. Awesome. That looks like a butterfly. Does anyone have any other questions? Sure, go ahead, Reed.
All right, go ahead, Reed.
But I don't find what it's.
Hey, Reed, talk really slow. Talk slowly, okay? Because the camera is going boop, 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 so it's hard to hear.
Now talk to her.
This.
Okay, go ahead.
It's supposed to be a what?
It's supposed to be a rock?
With some white on top.
Nice.
I want to check the
Okay, is that all you wanna
story.
say?
So I made this flat face thing.
Have you ever seen
Before I
any?
put the watch on it.
Have you ever
And
seen
I
any
put it around with-
stone that has shells in it?
No.
Sandstone, and it sometimes it breaks
Sand?
up really quick. You guys
Okay.
see
I'm sweaty.
what coal looks like? I found this in a river. Isn't that neat? Can you think of why some stone has shells in it? Maybe long time ago, there was an ocean there or a lake with little clams or seashells. And then over time, they got packed down real tight and heated up. And then that's why sometimes you find little clams and stuff in different sandstone and different kinds of stone. So what's everyone's favorite part about water? We heard some great things today. Oh gosh. Well, thanks everyone so much for spending time and doing activities with us. We really appreciate you all. And we have another event tomorrow at 4, and we have an event on Wednesday at 5. If you want to join us, we'll be doing some more activities. Tommy, who's been in the chat, will be doing one of the activities. Caitlin, who's also here, is going to be doing an activity on Wednesday with us. And we can learn more about water and the environment and different fun things, okay? So if you guys want to sign up for that, please do. Feel free to send us pictures. Brian, do you have anything else you want to chat about? Hi, Simon. One time at daycare, we were digging and you found coal. You found coal digging at daycare. My goodness, that's so neat. Reed, you like water because it makes you hot. It helps, well, if you're in a hot tub, I guess, or a hot spring, but it helps cool. It helps you in the summer when you feel hot, right? Yes. You guys have been so great today. Thank you all for joining us. Do you want to stay on and play with Play-Doh for a little bit? As long as Mom